Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. And I'm really delighted to be joined by Johnny Bennett from DreamBox Maths, part of Daisy Education. So you might have heard of them from the back in the day when they were reading solution. They've got DreamBox Reading Plus as well, which is one of the programs we love. Today we're talking about maths, and it actually comes up a lot in our community chat, and especially in our Facebook group. It's actually what's happening to diagnose some of the children with maths. And I've been analysing quite a lot of the Ofsted reports, and I'm doing a webinar on it tomorrow. But one of the key foundations of that report that I'm talking about is actually how do you diagnose the basic skills of children when they're Key Stage 1 and lower Key Stage 2. And actually, DreamBox Maths might be the answer for that. I think it is. And so Johnny's going to be talking about that today. And I'm really delighted that he's going through that, because as a program, I think I would love this program in my classroom, and actually to see where children are, to diagnose where they are and give them the next step in their learning. So Johnny's going to go through everything on that. So I'm going to be quiet in a moment. If you have any questions to Johnny, put them in the chat. Let us know what questions you've got, or any questions about the system, how you install it, or anything that you need to know from your perspective. So welcome, Johnny. And I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us all about DreamBox Maths.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Johnny. I'm one of the directors here at Daisy Education. And as Jonathan says, I'm here to talk to you today about our maths program, DreamBox Maths. It's been an interesting journey over the last sort of 12 to 18 months or so, but really in a really good place with the program right this second. So, Jonathan, just double checking, can you see my screen there now? And is that sort of flicking through the PowerPoint as I go backwards and forwards? I'm going to take silence as a yes. Just keep going. So yeah, the title of the session: DreamBox Maths Masterclass. Identify maths abilities, strengthen knowledge, build confidence. Okay, that's what we're looking to do with the program. Before I sort of dive straight into that, just a little bit of background on me. I have been with Digital Education for the last 9.5 years. Initially through the reading team, so we work with about 1,700 schools now across the UK with Reading Plus. Prior to that, I taught English abroad in China for it was about 18 months or so, and that made me realize that being in the classroom really wasn't something that I was cut out to do. Hats off to people who can, but I was inspired to be. I wanted to be in education when I came back, so that brought me into the ed tech industry. I'm really proud to have made a difference to so many, like the lives of so many kids over the last 9.5, 10 years with Reading Plus, and now with the introduction of DreamBox Maths. We've got a groundbreaking program that's got so much potential to grow, so much potential to thrive in the current UK landscape. In terms of what that looks like currently, you probably don't need me to talk through all of these, but we've done some kind of analysis over the last few years, and the majority of 2025 and the trend over the last few years in terms of Key Stage 2 SATs, the arithmetic and the reasoning and problem solving papers, a lot of it, almost 2/3 of it's requiring the pupils to have really secure knowledge from years 3 to 5. We don't advocate for this approach, but you could technically pass a Key Stage 2 SAT by being really, really proficient with year 3 to 5. Schools telling me that what the pupils are finding challenging within those sets are usually the fractions activity, multiplication, place value, and it's those multi-step or the questions that touch across multiple domains. From a year 6 teacher's perspective, again, having conversations day in, day out, there's a huge disparity between the most able children at the end of Key Stage 2 and those pupils who are still really working towards, usually when they're working towards, it's because of gaps that they're just not secure in basic foundational maths concepts from, like, say, year 1, year 2. There's an over-reliance, particularly in the arithmetic paper, of pupils not necessarily taking a step back and thinking about the most efficient methods and the most efficient ways of working. So they might be asked 8 plus 16, for example, and start counting on their fingers, or 1,000 minus 7, and going to a formal, like a column subtraction method, which, as well as taking a lot more time, a lot more brain power, they're giving themselves far more opportunities to go wrong and make mistakes by doing that. It's really difficult for the teachers to manage, I would say. In last year, only 62% met the expected standing across reading, writing, and maths, so more than a third of children didn't. They're left without the skills needed for secondary school, which we're determined as a company to sort of look at helping to shift that dial, helping to change that, so pupils can be much more comfortable when they get up into secondary school. Stamina was a huge thing. Obviously, there's 3 papers to get through. There's lots of questions across each of them. If pupils are going around the houses to get to their responses and their answers, that leaves kind of very little energy left when it gets to the back end of those papers. So they're running out of steam, they're running out of time, which is meaning marks are getting lost because the pupils aren't working efficiently enough with the mathematics. When it comes to disadvantaged pupils, the challenges they are heightened. So there's only 47% of disadvantaged pupils met the expected standing in reading, writing, and maths last year, and it was only 29% of SEND pupils. And no inclusion's a huge focus of the new sort of Ofsted framework, the new Ofsted reporting that Jonathan was talking about just a second ago. So it's all about, like, how can we support students now? How can we do it without adding to teacher workload? Because everyone's particularly busy at the moment. I think they're always busy, but I think over this last month, sort of 6 weeks or so, it seems to have ramped up considerably. I'm not entirely sure as to why, but yeah, Daisy Education, we've been going in the UK since 2014. Initially, as Jonathan kind of alluded to, as Reading Solutions UK. We grew rapidly, and then COVID struck, and that kind of took off even more. Like I say, we're now up to 1,700 schools ish using Reading Plus, and we've got about 100 schools using DreamBox Maths now as well. So Reading Plus is really well established. It's a cracking program. It's got tons and tons of efficacy behind it in terms of raising attainment, improving outcomes. That's what schools say about us typically as a company. We provide 2 cracking programs which are proven to work, proven to accelerate reading and maths development, but all that we also go above and beyond in terms of the support that we provide. When schools get up and running with us, that is just the start of it. We don't just kind of say, here you go, you crack on, we'll leave you to it. We make sure that you're well looked after for the full 3 years of your kind of license cycle with us, and we've got a really high renewal rate at the end of that 3 years as well, because we, like I say, we do go above and beyond. Now with DreamBox Maths, what DreamBox Maths is, it's an online program. It is not designed to replace the teacher. I don't think an online program can do that personally. It is a supplementary tool, but really importantly, it works at the child's own pace and it works at their own level. So pupils work fully independently. The program adapts around them. It adapts around correct answers, incorrect answers, but most importantly, and what is different from other platforms, is it reacts to the child's thinking and to their strategies as well. So if we see them going around the houses to get to the right answer, building 17 on a reckon, grabbing each bead one at a time, for example, we'll be holding them in those activities, and we'll be looking to reroute their working memory from being wasted currently, effectively, to develop an automaticity so you can free up that working memory so you can build on that with more complex maths. Everything they're doing in the platform is feeding back into the teachers. So in terms of monitoring, tracking, etc., it's really straightforward. There's no prep required for a DreamBox Maths session. There's no marking. It is all done via the system. Let's say the program adapts to their thinking, but then the screen recordings built into the reporting so that teachers, when it's identifying pupils are coming up against barriers, they are having struggles, and the program's working with them, but teachers want to have a look into it as well. There's those screen recordings you can look at, and you might identify that actually it's a piece of academic language that the pupils don't understand, that you could just address with the pupils, or it's a misconception, so they're making the same mistake over and over again, and it's really clear to see. So just a 20-30 second conversation, and let's get the pupils sort of back on track for that. It does work for all learners, so your pupils who are flying, pushing on for greater depth might be getting, I don't know, scaled scores of 118, 119, 120, but it's still going to be useful for those pupils. It has a real focus on developing depth to a pupil's understanding in maths, which I think is really, really important. We want the pupils to be able to show understanding of maths concepts in various different ways so that they have that variation. They've got that flexibility. They become mathematical thinkers who can take a step back. They can make connections. They can spot the patterns, spot the clues, spot the interlinking ideas, which is quite tricky in a world where a lot of the schemes that schools are following are like teaching various different things, but doing them kind of in blocks where it's almost isolating them. So it's difficult for the pupils to think kind of strategically outside of that. It does provide sort of one-to-one support. So pupils do need headphones for DreamBox Maths. The program acts like a mini coach. If teachers are asked questions in a session, we recommend always just flip it back on to the pupils, so get them thinking. We want to work on their resilience, want to work on their growth mindset. All the support they need is built into the platform, but for some learners initially it can be something where they've got to potentially, before they start, they've got a little bit of learned helplessness about them. So yeah, kind of breaking down that barrier in the first instance. It's dead flexible in terms of the way that it works. So it does go right the way down to stuff you typically introduce to the pupils in reception. So work around subitizing, work around, can you identify that that is more than that, or that is equal to, or that is less than. It goes across your content domains. So in geometry, at that lower starting point, we're looking at like, can you identify that there's a repeating pattern there? What is that repeating pattern? Can you finish it based on what you see at the beginning? Can you start it based on what you see at the end? Can you plug in the gaps kind of throughout? It would be a really preventative approach if you're using it in Key Stage 1, where they might only log in for sort of 5 to 10 minutes per day, but it's just making sure that they get the practice and the consolidation and the overlearning exactly where they need it, so that we're not having kind of similar problems to what I'm seeing now, speaking to upper Key Stage 2 teachers, where pupils aren't secure with number bonds to 10. For example, and it's holding them back when the maths gets more challenging. It then, as I say, focuses on building with a lot of depth to it. So lots of different digital manipulatives, some that are familiar, some that are unfamiliar, but ultimately designed to reveal the why and the mathematical structures. to the pupils. So deep conceptual understanding is at the heart of what the program's looking to achieve. In upper key stage 2, a lot of teachers are telling me that it's just gaps. So gaps from previous years, but if you've got a classroom of 30, they're all individuals. They've all got their own gaps in knowledge. That how do you decide what to do, when to do it? Because it's not a one size fits all. So the program takes really, really good care of that by building lessons for the children in real time, but then adjusting their pathway in real time based on what it's just seen as well. In Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, it's a very targeted intervention for pupils who are behind or significantly behind with their maths. So if they're coming into secondary school and they haven't hit the age-related expectation at the end of Key Stage 2, even if they have, to be honest, even if they have hit the expectation at Key Stage 2, the likelihood is they've got gaps in their understanding that could potentially hold them back when you're looking to develop maths at Key Stage 3. A lot of Key Stage 3 teachers are telling me that they're often having to revisit content and the basics. They're having to teach fractions again or percentages again before they can look at percentage change, for example. So it's just making sure that the pupils are kind of well-rounded as mathematicians. There's 3 different learning environments that the pupils would work in, because a year 8 child is very different to a year 2 child. So if you've got a year 2 child on the program, they'll be in this kind of storybook look and feel where you're helping Barnacle Beard pack for his next adventure, to sail the 7 seas to find the treasure. They've been put together by game designers. So you've got the dinosaurs, you've got the pixies, you've got the pet village, and they can go into any of those, and the maths itself will remain the same. But then they've got these little tokens that they can earn through completing lessons on the program. They can spend those tokens in the shop or the arcade. When they go through into Key Stage 2, it's got an older look and feel to it, where they decorate their own dashboard by choosing an avatar. They decorate the wallpaper, they earn those coins as well. One thing that's really important is that we want, so in terms of getting this into the timetable in the school day, we recommend sort of 15-20 minutes a day or 3 half-an-hour sessions per week typically. We want that time to be done intensively with rigor. The shop is shut within school hours just by default, but it is something that the pupils can log into from home as well. In the Key Stage 3 environment, we've got the similar things kind of built in terms of those little dopamine hits. These little blue symbols here, teachers can manually assign specific modules of work to the pupils as well. So the adaptive engine drives the vast majority of what the pupils are being exposed to and what their choices are. But then teachers can assign specific modules as well. The AI that's built into the background of the system will look at the games that they're working on. If it feels like they're avoiding certain topics, they'll keep a choice there, but it'll be a choice of the things that they were avoiding previously or they weren't being very successful on previously. What's really important to talk about if you've got a year 5 child or even a year 8 child who is working at a year 2 level, they get the age-appropriate environment, but they're given the level-appropriate mathematics. So, already touched on this slightly, but what we're looking at, obviously, it's getting late in the day for the year 6s to make a sort of dramatic impact for this year, but certainly looking ahead, I'd be working with kind of lots and lots of year 5 pupils ahead of the end of the year, so they can come back in September at a much higher starting point, that they also know the program, so they can really hit the ground running with it. With DreamBox Maths, again, because we use the manipulatives, the AI that's built into the background, it watches their interactions with the manipulatives. and it picks up on where they're being successful. It picks up on where they are working inefficiently. And then again, it'll hold them in those activities to prompt them towards smarter ways, more efficient ways of working. If they really struggle, it'll look back to the root cause of the issue, look to sort of box that off. I always use the example of bridging through 10. If we identify that the pupils are counting on their fingers, for example, or counting using the individual beads, we take it right back to tens frames. We look at the decomposition of the number. We build it back up again. We give them STEM sentences so they have that auditory reinforcement, get a lovely visual alongside that as well, which is all geared towards helping them retrieve that as an idea, as a skill, when they're outside of the program. It does go back a long way as well, so it'll make sure that those key foundational maths skills are secure. Got some like testimonials there from a couple of schools. Like I say, we're working with about 100 schools now. We've got pupils using it from reception right the way up to like year 9 and year 10 in a couple of secondary schools. But the feedback's always the same. The feedback's always the pupils get a lot out of it, so they really, really enjoy it. But it's not that kind of surface level, oh, this is great. They feel like they're getting real benefit from it. So we get their buy-in very, very quickly from the outset. And then from a teacher's perspective, what shines through is it's making their lives significantly easier. Not only is it an hour and 15 to an hour and a half that they don't necessarily have to prepare anything for, but the amount of information that it brings out the other side that can inform their teaching, inform their planning. It's just hugely beneficial. The knock-on effect of that is the program's having a bigger impact. The teachers are able to have a bigger impact, so we get better results at the end. Now, going back to the like the content, the program itself, the way we approach developing math skills is a little bit different to the more traditional I do, we do, you do approach. So we'll put the pupils onto, so we'll take some feedback from our schools, the class teachers, the senior leaders, in the first instance, as to where a child is kind of roughly working at. Usually it's having a look at kind of where you feel their biggest gaps are. So you might have a child in year 5 who has significant gaps at a year 2 level. We'll take that information, we'll give them the age appropriate environment, we'll give them the level appropriate mathematics, and then we'll put them on the program and they'll just start playing games. But then as soon as they start playing, we collect data, and they might move on very quickly in certain games, in certain areas, but drop back over in other areas as well. But fundamentally, when we introduce something new, when we introduce an activity for the first time or an objective for the first time within DreamBox Maths, we want to understand, like, where are you at with this from a conceptual understanding perspective. Now, to do that, we deliberately don't give too much instruction. So we'll introduce it using a manipulative. We'll say, here's how you use this manipulative. Over to you. So we put the onus on the child exploring. They're having to think for themselves. They're having to look for the patterns and look for the clues. So they're problem solving from the moment they set foot on the program. They're applying logic to the situation, and they're taking ownership over their own learning. At least part of DreamBox Maths is getting the pupils very comfortable with the fact that mistakes are part of the learning journey, particularly in math. There are going to be instances where trial and error just kind of has to happen. rather than what I know some pupils do is they'll see a question, they won't know what to do, they won't know where to start, and they'll freeze. So they'll come unstuck because they haven't got that conceptual understanding. By exploring, they are going to be revealing the structure and the maths that sits underneath the manipulative. If they get things right, we move them through into this middle section. If they get things wrong, that's where the magic happens in terms of the program kicking in and being almost like a mini coach to the children. So let's give them scaffolds, let's give them supports. Ultimately, at the end, we will show, we will model, but then it's branched back up again. So they've still got to show that conceptual understanding. If they, like, it's amazing how quickly with those scaffolds, with those supports, that the program will kind of help the penny to drop for the kids. However, if it doesn't, and they struggle a couple of times, and it's not looking like that productive struggle, it is just genuinely, we're not really getting it at all, the program will close that game down, say, let's come back to that later, and it'll look at a more foundational prerequisite skill. But just so you can see an example of one of the games here, in this scenario, we're not really interested in the answer in the first instance. We're not interested in 6 times 7 being 42. We're looking at, can you apply it to area? 6 rows of 7 blocks takes up a certain amount of space. As they continue to explore, we gradually release the scaffold. So they've gone from having the numbers around the outside to a partially labeled ruler. We're then looking at like flexibility. So do the pupils, does the individual automatically know that 5 times 12 plus 2 times 12 is going to take up the same amount of space? 7 times 12 or 3 times 12 plus 4 times 12? Or are they having to grab 5 and then grab 3, realize it's a bit too big and have to put it back and grab the 2? Like, is it automatic, or are the pupils really having to think and work hard here? All of those little clicks of the mouse, all of those little taps of the screen, all of those little moves that the pupils are making within the program are all tracked, and we're looking at like how secure are the pupils in this area, how much scaffold do they need, how quickly can we take them through this activity, how difficult can we make the problems at this time for this pupil. When they get into this middle section, it's all about honing in on the strategies that they're using. Now, again, it's not us telling the pupils, this is how you must solve this problem. We want the pupils to have a toolkit of efficient strategies that they can call upon depending on the situation that they find themselves in, because they've got that conceptual understanding. We're then looking at efficient strategies, and that's going to underpin genuine mathematical fluency. So that example I was talking about before, where we might identify a child building 1 by 1 on a Reckon Rec, for example, we'll let them go through their process, and we'll celebrate the fact that they get the answer right, but then say things like, can you do that in fewer moves, or can you do it with fewer clicks of the mouse? In this example here, where we're looking at helper equations or friendly equations, if we identified that the pupils were building 4 times 14 by adding together 4 times 3 plus 4 times 5 plus 4 times 4 plus 4 times 3 plus 4 times 2, yeah, they'd get there, but have they actually made it any easier for themselves? And I'd argue not. Actually, you've just given yourself a lot more work to do, and a lot more places again where you can be incorrect and go wrong. So we'll let them go through that process, but then bring it back up again and say, look, have you thought about starting off with this instead? The final section, it's all about that application. So we're looking at those efficient mental strategies, getting the pupils to a point where they're automatic in the more basic maths, so that we can build on that. The program is designed to look after itself in the day-to-day, again, you might have some pupils who put their hand up and say, oh, I don't really know what to do on this one. Always recommend, a big part of our training to teaching staff is, well, flip it back onto them. Ask them the questions. What do you see? What do you notice? Where do you think you need to start? Right, okay, well, give that a go. Try that. Just remove that fear, that anxiety of, well, I might get it wrong, so I don't want to give it a go. But then everything they're doing in the program is feeding back into the reporting. So monitoring and tracking is incredibly straightforward. The first thing that we recommend looking at is productivity. So how productive are they being with the time that we've given them on DreamBox Maths? Because if they're on there for 75 to 90 minutes a week, that's more than enough time for them to get through at least 5 lessons on the program. You can see how successful they've been in real time as well. So you can celebrate any quick wins, but you can also look at those screen recordings. It's impossible to be stood behind every pupil all of the time, but this is just building up that bank of information. There's quick wins that you'll be able to kind of have within real time. But then everything's feeding back into like a curriculum report, which is almost like a question level analysis, looking at all of the national curriculum objectives. If I'm the year 6 teacher, I can look right the way back to pre-key stage, have a look back at year 1, year 2, and I can see the pupils' gaps in their understanding. The program's going to be prioritizing the work for the individual pupil. Again, teachers can choose to override that and give them like manually assigned work as well. This report, that curriculum report, is really useful for your teachers when they're planning their lessons. Like in year 4, we might have like adding fractions coming up, and before that, maybe 6 weeks before, I'd be looking at this report and going, right, okay, well, I've got some pupils who are still struggling to work out equivalent fractions. Some pupils are still struggling with their times tables. Some pupils can't recognize a half yet. So there's work that can be done in advance of that to ensure that the pupils, we're giving them the best chance of being able to access those lessons when they come around. Can also be used as like repeated deliberate practice as well. Like I say, we genuinely make sure that you're well looked after when you work with us on Reading Plus and on DreamBox Maths. I know a lot of companies out there will charge for additional training. For example, we never will. We, like 18 months down the line, for example, there's a big focus initially on getting you up and running. So the first session is just making sure everyone's confident, launching it, getting the pupils logged in, making a start. The second session is geared towards the basic reporting functions. We'll then get together with senior leaders and the maths lead to have a look at, well, who's making progress? Who do we need to perhaps look at a bit more closely in terms of their usage or their interactions with the program? If then 18 months down the line, somebody moves on, then schools can always contact us to get in touch. To do some training, with the team. We do a lot like to add value outside of just the program as well. So we do some initiatives, some competitions, some challenges. We put on conferences. We did a conference in the Northeast just a couple of weeks ago, which was kind of free for schools, but had some cracking speakers on all day, and like the feedback that we got from that was fantastic. So we want to sort of take it a little bit more on the road moving forward. We always offer our schools the opportunity to try our programs in their setting before they need to commit to taking it further. We always have an exploratory conversation in the first instance, just to make sure that the program, it's going to be suitable for what you're looking for and the needs of your children. We're lucky the program's so flexible that it usually does kind of fit the bill. We can then take you through a full demonstration of the program, so you can see it kind of from top to bottom, right the way from the pupil side through to the staffing information. And then if you see off the value off the back of that, then we'd set you up with a free pilot of the software. Now it's a 4-week pilot, so it's a really good chunk of time to see how the pupils engage, see what they get out of it, see what the staff think. But it's also an opportunity to see the green shoots of progress with things like resilience, engagement within maths, the willingness to try, the willingness to give things a go, which is hugely important. If you'd like to have a conversation in the first instance, that QR code on the screen there, that is a link that takes you direct into my calendar, just for a 15 to 20 minute meeting. Does anyone have any questions? I'll leave that up on the screen just in case anyone wants to grab it.
Oh, that was so good, Johnny. I mean, so much information in that. And as I said earlier, I think if I was in a classroom now, I would love to have this, because it will really give me a good understanding where the children are. You've got a whole history of the children as well. It doesn't replace the teacher. It informs the teacher of what's going on with the maths for that child. And so, brilliant, really, really good. We have a few questions for you. Which year groups is it most suited for? Is it early years?
So that's from Wayne, isn't it? Wayne, the answer is across the board, if I'm honest. We've got schools using it as like an intensive program ahead of Key Stage 2 SAT, so they're using it really intensively in year 6. We've got schools supporting that transition from year 2, like Key Stage 1 into Key Stage 2, so using it at the beginning of year 3, where it's just making sure that they do have that core foundational maths knowledge. And we've got some using it as a really preventative approach, but like say lower down, just sort of 5-10 minutes a day. So Wayne, across the board, I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but is what it is.
So it could be used in early years as a group work type to find out where the understanding is of maths.
So the bulk of the work should be done independently on the program,
okay,
rather than in small groups. But all of the games that are built into DreamBox Maths, all of our digital manipulatives, whether they're unfamiliar or familiar, they are all built into the background as well, so can be used as teaching tools. So for introducing time, our clock face, when you adjust the minute hand, the hour hand moves at its corresponding rate. When you introduce the second hand and nudge the hour hand, then the second hand starts to kind of fly around. So there's some fantastic visuals for the pupils to learn from. And if you're using it in year 6, every teacher can have access to all of the resources that sit around it as well.
That's good to know. Sarah asked an interesting question about small schools and how to rapidly improve their maths results. How do you suggest they do that with that? How does it fit within everything in school?
Yeah. So Sarah, it's a good question, and the word rapidly is one that it's an interesting one, because I know there's a lot of schools out there. I'm on like Facebook groups and things like that, and I hear a lot of conversations about people where year 6 teachers are asking the question, like, how do I get my pupils to end of year expectation? And the amount of people going back saying, well, really hammer that arithmetic, and then they don't really need to pick up that many points on the reasoning and problem solving. Personally, I'm not that comfortable with that approach, because I think we're then setting the pupils up for secondary school, where the likelihood is they'll probably sink when they get there, because they're going up with too many sticky plasters in too many different areas. So for me, it would be, if I was you right now, it depends on the situation that you're in, but there's there's impact that we'd see with this year's cohort, and by that I mean in terms of probably a little bit of fluency, a little bit of resilience and willingness to explore and give it a go. But year 5 for next year, then the program would have a significant impact. But it's that systematic change, I would say, lower down, that's going to make the biggest difference to you in the longer term.
Okay, that's a good answer to that question. And then finally from Sarah again, how do you track the progress? If you're a school leader, what does that look like, and how easy is it to access and track? Because we know it's sort of like at the moment, as I said earlier, I'm looking through all the Ofsted reports, and it's about the impact of what's happening in the classroom. How do you track that?
Yeah, so it gives you a year-related maths level to begin with. That is then broken down across the content domains. And then in real time, as they use the program and as they spend time on number, geometry, measure, etc., we track their progress in those areas. So across an academic year, we can see pupils making like 1.5 to 2 years worth of progress in maths.
Oh, wow.
Like 60% more progress than non-users is what we typically see from them spending an hour a week on the program. That's
incredible, that amount, in some ways. Yeah, so that's even more reason. I'm going to bring this slide down and say, so is there anything else that school leaders need to know about DreamBox?
Yeah, it's cutting edge technology that's proven to accelerate development. That's the main message to come through. But it's that unique approach, looking down at conceptually, like where are they at? Do they understand the structures and understand the why? Because that's where they're going to be really flexible mathematicians who can make those connections.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So thank you very much for your time. And if you have any other questions, do get in contact with Johnny, and I'm sure he'll answer all your questions. One thing I do know about Daisy Education, their customer service and their support for school leaders is absolutely second to none. So, and we hear it from a lot of school leaders that we work with. Actually, they love working with Daisy Education. So, yeah, thank you for your time today. And I will put all the notes up in the community, or where you can find more information and etc. So thank you, Johnny, and have
thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.